To say the Texans have had a busy offseason would be quite the understatement. They offload the all-pro DeAndre Hopkins and a pair of picks in this upcoming draft. They get back David Johnson. They get back Brandin Cooks and other picks. Cooks and Johnson have combined for a single Pro Bowl appearance. Hopkins himself has 4. Let me try and go in search of some understanding. Here's our insider, Jeff Darlington. Good morning, Jeff. What is the Texans' plan here?
That's the question that everybody in Texas would like to know, those following the Texans and Bill O'Brien's tenure. Now, the interesting part about this is that we talk about the offseason. This really is an extension of when Bill O'Brien became the general manager, maybe even in an unofficial capacity before this season started, trading for Laremy Tunsil, giving up a first-round pick to do so. That becomes the question. Will Bill O'Brien, in his efforts and attempts to change the culture with the Texans, get enough time as the general manager to do that? Because he is squarely on the hot seat at this point, despite the fact that he only has one losing season since he joined the team in 2014. This, though, is not necessarily at this point about Bill O'Brien as the head coach. It is more about Bill O'Brien as the general manager. That is what we'll have to see how that plays out, Green.
Yeah, the results and the reputation don't really go together right now. So that's the Houston piece. How about the Rams? What an offseason they've had. They've unloaded Todd Gurley. They've unloaded Brandin Cooks. Where are they now?
Yeah, I was talking to Jared Goff actually briefly about this yesterday, just about Brandin Cooks being sent off, because I know that Goff was a big fan of Brandin Cooks. He felt like he was just such a high character guy in the locker room, a really solid player for the team. He, though, didn't express the type of disappointment I would have expected in terms of the fact that he lost this player. He loves the guy, but he understands the team has to make some tough decisions. The one guy that we should be really paying attention to now, Josh Reynolds. He says this guy is an absolute stud. Watch for Reynolds to potentially have a big breakout in 2020. That part of the reason they felt comfortable unloading Cooks.
All right, Jeff, stay with me here. We have much more for you as the day goes on, but let me bring in Louis Riddick and Booger McFarland, who are both here today. It's great to see both of you guys. And Louis, I'm going to start with you because the criticism of Bill O'Brien as a general manager has been loud. What do you make of the trades and the deals he has done these offseason?
Well, clearly, I think it's obvious, Greeny, that when you're talking about the trade market, Bill has struggled to extract maximum value and get fair return in some of the trade deals he's made, starting with the timing that was a little bit botched as far as, Jadeveon Clowney and his ouster, what he paid for Laremy Tunsil, and then not signing him and not making it contingent upon signing a long-term contract. Now Laremy Tunsil absolutely has all the leverage on them in that regard. What he received in return for DeAndre Hopkins in comparison to what Stephon Diggs netted the Minnesota Vikings, people are comparing that. And then now, when you're trading for Brandin Cooks and basically swapping out DeAndre Hopkins for Brandin Cooks, and Brandin Cooks has an injury history, I'm sure that's part of the reason why the Rams were willing to move on from him, besides the fact that they wanted to get out from underneath that contract. That calls that into question. And then when you just think about the football aspect of it, and you look at how their wide receiver room is composed right now, with guys like Kenny Stills and Will Fuller and Brandin Cooks, that's really not the kind of mix, along with Randall Cobb, that you're looking for in a wide receiver room. And then here's the last thing when you're talking about managing relationships. When you think about what the Buffalo Bills gave up for Stephon Diggs, remember who is up there in a personnel capacity right now. It's Brian Gaine, who Bill O'Brien ousted down there in Texas. You start to wonder, was he not able to go ahead and have Buffalo be a player for DeAndre Hopkins because of the fact that maybe that relationship is strained? And you know how much I talk about managing relationships. So now it's going to call into question that relationship and how that maybe was mismanaged and led to Brian Gaine being ousted from there. The relationship between him and DeAndre Hopkins, it's no secret that those two weren't fond of each other, despite the fact that they tried to make that just a contract situation. Bill says DeAndre wanted more money. DeAndre wanted to get out of there. Everyone knows that those two did get along and see eye to eye. That's not hard to figure out. You just have to make a few phone calls and figure that one out. So right now, Jeff is right. This is not about Bill the coach. This is about Bill the GM. This is about Bill the deal maker. And right now, look, you could look at the deals that he has made going all the way back to last year and go, he needs some help, and they better get it fast.
So, Booger, let's be reasonable here, or let's be fair. The entire list of coaches who have won 4 divisions in the last 5 years is Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, and Bill O'Brien. So for all of the criticism, he's obviously doing something right. Where does the truth lie in all of this?
Well, Greeny, I think he's done a really nice job at being a coach and bringing Deshaun Watson along. But it's going to be hard to separate Bill O'Brien and the job he's done as a head coach with some of the trades that Bill O'Brien has made, because from a relationship standpoint, being a GM and being a head coach are very, very different. And I just look at this last trade. I mean, once you get past the picks and all that, he basically traded DeAndre Hopkins for Brandin Cooks and David Johnson. So you traded a legit #1 wide receiver for a wide receiver with a worse contract and a injury history from a standpoint of concussion. So I just don't understand how that makes sense. And I know Deshaun Watson, to me, that's the biggest factor in all this. We can debate Bill O'Brien, we can debate his relationship status and his prowess as a GM or head coach. But Deshaun Watson is still there. So what is the message to your young superstar quarterback when you're trading away arguably one of the top 3 receivers in football? So I'm not sure what he's doing, but I know this. He's got to fix a lot of things once this pandemic gets back and he can come back and sit down and talk to his team. Because if I'm on that team, Greeny, I want a lot of answers, and I want to hear them directly from him.
Now, Bill O'Brien was beating the Kansas City Chiefs, the eventual Super Bowl champs, 24-0 in a playoff game in January. Boy, does that feel like a very long time ago.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.